to myself again. But it's the only...
Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. Tuesday night means we've got Liam Kennedy on from the Shields Gazette. Good evening, Liam.
Evening, you all right?
Yeah, good to see you, mate. Big thanks to newworkwear.com, specialists in the supply and branding of clothing for the workplace. They have been our main sponsors for this month, just sponsoring the StreamYard. And a big shout out to qtechshop.co.uk, who are sponsors of the show, but also big help putting t-shirts out there together for us, which are available at newcastlelegends.com. QTech, of course, make pool tables and snooker tables, amongst other things, in the Wall's End area. They've also helped us raise a lot of money for the food bank over the last 3 weeks. Hangover Part 3, NUFC Matters 3 Amigos t-shirt finally went last night for £106. We had the second who also donated £150 plus their gift aid. So that t-shirt actually 320 last night. So I think combined total over the three t-shirts is £680 in 3 weeks for the food bank, which is absolutely fascinating, fantastic, brilliant. Thanks everyone for your support. Over the moon about that. We do have a special t-shirt which will be going up on Friday because of the success. It would be nice to try and get this one to go for as much as we could. It would be great to hit £1,000. If we could hit 300 odd quid for a t-shirt, it would be fantastic. So more about that on the Three Amigos on Friday. As always, Tuesday night with Liam, it's a busy night. So much to talk about. So many questions coming in. Dave is already straight in there asking about what Mark Douglas had to say. Is he in the same category as Luke Edwards? I'm not sure what that's about.
I've no idea. To be honest, I'm not about to stop putting journalists in categories.
Yeah,
I'm respectful to everybody in the industry in the Northeast. They're two guys, Mark Douglas and Luke Edwards, who for me were people that I really read when I was younger. Before I came into the industry, both worked on the Journal. Thought they were fantastic journalists. And any face-to-face contact I've had with those two guys while I've been a journalist in the area has been fantastic as well. So I have no idea. I'm not about to start putting people into categories and lighting fires up here, there, and everywhere. But feel free to come back.
We've had enough. We've had enough of that, mate. We've had enough of all that anyway, mate. I mean, Mark Douglas has got the utmost respect for me. He's a good lad. You know, I've always had respect for Luke Edwards, but unfortunately, things over the summer with the takeover got a bit heated. And look, we just chose to block each other, and we've moved on. So, you know, whatever he said, I'm sure he's not done it with any malice. Mark is definitely not like that. Let's talk about Callum Wilson. It seems to be good news, Liam. We were all a bit fearful after the game at the weekend that, you know, he could be out for maybe 8 weeks. It sounds as if it could be a little bit more promising.
Yeah, it does sound that way. Really problematic. If the guy that's probably taken us away from that bottom strugglers in the Premier League with his goals, his instinct, his ability to just get on the end of anything in the area and took penalties away in particular. If he were to be injured for any length of time, then it would be a real concern for Steve Bruce, concern for Newcastle United fans, because you look at the options that are behind that and you think, it's just a throwback going back to Joe Linton or an Andy Carroll, which has been tried at Newport and in other games this season. And Newcastle really struggled with Carroll as the target man. So yeah, it seems as though it's not the kind of hamstring problem that's going to keep him out for a while, according to reports elsewhere. And that can only be a good thing. So say even if he only misses the Chelsea game, but then he's back beyond that, then Newcastle United have probably been quite lucky and dodged a little bit of a bullet there in that sense, because they've got injuries. To the likes of obviously Martin Dubravka's long-term, Matt Ritchie's long-term, John Joe Shelvey reasonably long-term, Dwight Gale, fingers crossed he'll be not too far away. Judging by the last time I spoke to Steve Bruce, he said 2, 3, 4 weeks. That'll probably take us up to in and around the December mark. So there's light at the end of the tunnel with some of these players, but the last thing we need is players being added to that list. And recently we've seen Ryan Fraser notch up an injury, which has kept him out of the Scotland games, crucial Scotland games. In this international period, they're going to try and get into the first international tournament since France 98. Spent a lot of time up in Scotland, live up there. My son and my daughter were born in Scotland, so a little bit of a soft spot. I'm not the usual England fan where I want Scotland not to do well, but Ryan Fraser can't be involved in that. And then obviously, if we were to add Callum Wilson to that list, it's probably the worst possible injury Newcastle United could suffer. And I even probably put Alan St-Maximin into that category. The one player that Newcastle United can't miss would be Callum Wilson. And if you added that to the list of what we'd probably said at the start of the season, you would have picked, if you'd picked two players that Newcastle United couldn't do without, it would be Martin Dubravka and Alan St-Maximin. You definitely add Callum Wilson to that list now of the three players Newcastle can't really do without. And to have two of those out for any length of time could be really detrimental to Newcastle United's chances of staying in this division.
Yeah, but good news for us. Let's hope that he does. It does turn out to be a positive one. International break, as we said, couldn't have come at a better time. Richard Masters, obviously much publicised meeting today. There was a lot come out of it. In a lot of ways, nothing really to do with the takeover, though.
Look, I think there were things that you can take from it. I think there's a growing narrative here that the pressure is building on the Premier League. There were hints at transparency towards the end of the meeting that they're going to be forced into some kind of transparency on this. There were questions with regards the secrecy of the Project Big Picture negotiations in the early stage. And then obviously following the Rick Parry and Richard Masters stuff, which was quite enlightening, I thought, in a Newcastle United takeover sense. Although some people out there may not agree, please get in touch and say what you think. Then we had the absolute debacle of Greg Clark. It's just incredible, really, a dinosaur of days gone by. It's incredible that the English game, historic game, is being represented by somebody so out of touch. And you know what? It was just really embarrassing to watch the guy trip and tumble and just couldn't get his words out in any kind of eloquent level. It was really painful. And that's a guy, we're not just talking about somebody who was chairman of the FA, we're talking about somebody who's vice president of FIFA as well. We're talking about somebody that's very, very highly rated in terms of the governing bodies of the world. And he says things like he did. Coloured people. It's just not acceptable in today's language. It hasn't been acceptable in today's language for a long, long time. Suggesting that the disparaging remarks he made about women's football, totally out of touch with the modern game and the way that women's football has been such a fantastic outlet and the diversity and acceptance of women's football over recent years. It's been a real success story of English football, the growth over the last sort of 15 to 20 years in that sport. Other remarks, such as the racial stereotyping almost that he brought out about South Asian people working in IT departments. All these kind of things was just quite remarkable. And then he also brought sexuality into it as well, talking about the fact that people who are born gay, we all know that you are what you are, and that's your preference. To suggest that people make a lifestyle choice to become gay, it was quite incredible to listen to the type of things that he was saying, and it was quite embarrassing in a lot of ways. And it has been the right outcome, because the FA cannot have been best pleased with what they heard, especially when they're pushing the idea of diversity, equality, and the English game is all about that. To hear somebody talking that language was quite embarrassing, I would imagine. So it was quite enlightening in that sense. We had the drama later on of Greg Clark, but I did take a lot from not necessarily Richard Masters' words, but I did take a lot from Rick Parry, especially given the really right front and centre role that he's taken on this Project Big Picture. To hear him talk about the secrecy and the idea that it was still doubling down on the idea that it was the right call to only involve the teams at the top, because the rest, if it was done by committee, which it should be, the 14 votes, the 20 teams, everybody vote, every one club, one vote. If it was done by committee in that sense, that they wouldn't get anything done. So he had to go to the six, and it wasn't a random six. It was a selected six, the six at the top. So that shows that there is agendas at play here. But we all know this. This isn't something new. It's something that we've known for a long time. Anybody that's followed the Newcastle United takeover process has read any of my stories, and the numerous Newcastle United journalists out there have been covering this subject, as well as the nationals, would know that this is agenda ridden. It really is. It stinks English football, the way that Newcastle United takeover has been dealt with, and it's now been seen to a much wider audience that the agendas that were at play here to keep the power within a very small group of clubs has been orchestrated not just from the representatives of clubs at the top flight. It's also been done by representatives of the EFL, which is quite incredible, really, that we find ourselves in that situation. But we'll see how the next few weeks and months play out. Fingers crossed that we don't have some kind of Project Big Picture 2.0, which is really what was suggested, I thought, from the meeting today, that we're going to see Big Picture sweep back in with a slight change. We've seen talks of how it was the 18th draft that was the leak recently, leaked by, according to Rick Parry, leaked by people who wanted to kill the deal. So I'll let everybody decide on what type of clubs might have wanted to kill a deal and what dots can be joined in that sense. But it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, because the idea of Project Big Picture taking away the power of anybody to buy any other football club unless the top six agree with it is really fundamentally wrong. And it's something that English football really should push against. There is nothing wrong with providing cash in the short term to football clubs who need it most. But there is a big problem in trading that off with the idea that the integrity of English football is sold off for a short-term gain. So I think it's something that we're all going to have to watch with a keen eye. It seems like this is something that those at the top of the game, and I include Rick Parry in that conversation, want to push this through. They want Project Big Picture 2.0. And I imagine probably in the next few weeks, we'll start to see little leaks in the sense that this is coming back with slight changes. I can imagine one change that won't be made despite the outcry is that the teams at the top want to make the decisions of English football. They see the clubs in and around the rest of the league making short-term decisions to look after themselves because they don't know if they're going to drop out the division, and they want to have power to make long-term decisions for the strength of the game and to improve their own lot. Well, it works both ways. If the teams at the bottom are looking after their own lot, then the teams at the top are too. And this isn't something painted out that the teams at the top are going to then redistribute. They're going to strengthen the game for everybody and then redistribute that. They're not. They're going to strengthen the game for themselves and keep it within their pot. So it's something that everybody's Newcastle United, whether you're a Burnley fan, whether you're a Fulham fan, Aston Villa, Everton, Southampton, West Ham, whoever it may be, this is something that everybody's got to fight against, because the threat of these clubs taking over, basically running English football like a cartel, like a private members club where everybody else gets knocked back at the door if there's any big meeting taking place, is something we've got to fight against. We've got to push against this, because it really could be the beginning of the end of English football. I do get the good stuff. I get the idea of bailing clubs out. I still don't think, when you look at the ideas of Project Big Picture, it wasn't a handout to clubs.
No.
It is a short-term gain, and it's traded off against money they would have got anyway, even in the current model.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we all know that. We know the problems with Project Big Picture, but I wouldn't be surprised if this comes back in some way, shape, or form as a 2.0 in the coming weeks.
The good news is fan power still apparently works, because Newcastle United fans were at the forefront of boycotting pay-per-view and making a donation towards the food bank for the Manchester United game. The figures were apparently poor. They tried to fudge them, of course, and say they were higher. But the Premier League's had to backtrack and do a bit of a U-turn, and it's been discontinued, which is great news, pay-per-view.
It is really good news. And you talk about fan power, but it was Comrade Mike as well, wasn't it? Putting his statement out there saying he piled the pressure on too.
Yep,
I know it might not be amazingly popular, but he did. He put that pressure on. And it's told, and the fantastic work by a number of Newcastle United fans donating to the food bank. And that was replicated around the country, places like Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, whoever it may be. There was movements if anybody was on a pay-per-view, and we all know that was far too much to ask fans. And it was free to air in the summer. Why all of a sudden does it need to be paid for now? It's not like the Premier League is short of money, and that was something that really rang true from that the committee meeting today. Was constantly talked about, was that there is enough food at the table for everybody to eat in English football. There's enough table for enough at the table for the 20 clubs to get their fill and stock up their cupboards, as well as keep everybody alive, the other 72. And it's just about redistributing of that. And it needs to be done. It has to be redistributed, because you can't be expecting the amount of money that's made and spent in English football. You can't be expecting the taxpayer to bail football clubs out, not when there are rich neighbours just round the corner who will quite happily spend 50 million on a footballer and then give them £10 million a year wages. It cannot be a government. It cannot rely on the government to have to bail people out, because ultimately you've got to remember that down the line we'll all pay for that.
Yeah.
If we have to be bailing, if the government has to bail football clubs out left, right, and centre, we'll all pay for that. We'll all pay for that in taxes in years to come. We're obviously all going to be hit with the furlough extensions, that kind of thing. Everybody will pay for that, but you don't mind that because it's keeping the working man in a job. It's not the same with bailing the football club out. I'm all for football clubs being bailed out, but I don't believe the taxpayer should foot the bill.
No, going to be interesting times ahead, but you're definitely right. We are going to be paying a lot of this money back over the next few decades, I think. Michael Hurst asks a question, obviously not Newcastle United related, but a team that I know is close to your heart down in South Shields there, covering the Shields Gazette's area. Cheltenham at the weekend didn't quite go the way, but they should be proud of themselves. Did well.
Yeah, very much so. It was one of those games whereby it could have went either way. It was ones each at half time, and South Shields didn't want the half time whistle to come. They had 2 or 3 real gilt-edged chances, and if they could have gone in ahead, you just don't know. It could have been a different game, but it was one of those whereby maybe that sort of 3 division difference shone through in the second half, but they gave it a right go at the end. And it was another one of those, if they could have got a goal at the end, they really would have had a go. And there was a particular mention there for Darlington. Adam Campbell, former Newcastle United striker, was on target in that game. And they've got another couple of Newcastle United former players, Luke Charman and others. And it's fantastic to see at least one North East club in the second round of the FA Cup draw.
Yep. Did you find it a bit strange? I did. That the likes of Dunstan, etc. All those lower league games had been postponed for a month. Obviously, fixtures postponed because of the lockdown, but that the FA Cup was still allowed to go ahead.
No, I think I wouldn't have liked to have seen any games really taken off during this time, because if you can do things safely, then they probably should have carried on playing games. Like I've said on this show before, that non-league football is the lifeblood of this region. Non-league football. But I think the FA Cup had to carry on, because we're getting to a stage where there's a lot of full-time clubs would want to play that, and we couldn't have put this off indefinitely. So I do think it was important that the round got played, and we're really only talking about a week here. Between the lockdown and the in the actual fixture. So I think we're probably all right, but it was a little bit unfair on some of them, because the likes of South Shields were unable to train really, and they'd be only able to train now for the next month or so. So yeah, it was problematic in some ways, but I think, to be honest, in terms of timescales, I think the game had to go ahead.
Yep. Okay. Fair enough. Sam Arnold asking that question. You always get on a Tuesday. Any developments on the takeover? Have you? I mean, it's been an interesting week. BZG, of course, who we know the Geordie dentist and Steve Hasty had a lot of contact with over their attempt to buy the club. Come in, made the move for Derby, and it's been interesting to hear some of the comments coming out of Saudi. We touched on it a little bit last week, and just a quick one. Anything new this week?
Quick one, Steve. It's never quick when it goes on to this subject. Things are... Look, these things don't take... that. Although the time was the time was not given to the Premier League, these things still do take a little bit of time to pull together. It's not a case of all of a sudden, when they say you've got no more time, that the case is ready and things go. So things have to be... everything has to be correct. The last thing you would want is to go into a case, and this is me speaking hypothetically here. I'm not giving any information, because I honestly don't know where the state of play is at with regards to the NCSL movement. you've got to have your ducks in a row. It's all got to be right, because if it's not, when you go to court, that kind of thing will get picked apart. When you go to hearings to see if this can go to court, if you go to the point where they're pushing for an application for a CAT case to get this fast tracked, everything has to be ready and there. Everything has to be legitimate. Everything has to be properly done by the book. So you've got these things take a little bit of time. And that was one of the key reasons why the time wasn't given to the Premier League, because there's still a little bit of preparation to be done. But that preparation time shouldn't be another 14 days, and it won't be. I'm certain of that. And they didn't want to give the Premier League that time either, because they believe the Premier League's had enough time. And I kind of stand with them on that. With regards, are things moving? Yeah, like I said, I've just hinted at there that things are moving in the correct direction. There seems some muted positivity around speaking to people in and around things on that front. But we'll wait and see. There could be something this week. It could be early next week. I don't have a time frame to give anybody out there. But what I do know is that these guys put the letter before action in. They've had responses off the Premier League, more than one. And they plan on pushing this through. They plan on action following their letter before action. This isn't something that they've taken too lightly. There's been a fair bit of money spent on this. There's been a lot of time spent on this, a lot of effort. So I don't believe you go this far down that route to all of a sudden pull out and say, no, it's not something we're going to progress with. I wish I could give everyone a bit more information out there, but I hope everyone will understand that these things are at a stage where they're quite delicate legally. So I'm not going to put my foot in it. And even if I did know, I couldn't really say either way, which I don't know. I'm being brutally honest with you. Yeah. But I do know things are moving in the correct direction. That's the definite information that I can give you guys out there.
As I keep saying, silence is golden. We're hearing nothing unless someone comes out with a shirt on the pitch or comes out and says it's all off 100%. Then, there's still that bit of hope, and it's the hope that kills us.
That's what we would hear, Steve. That's the thing that anybody, and it's understandable, because even me speaking to my contacts who are close to these dealings on numerous different sides and facets there are to this takeover, the legal, everything. There hasn't been any denials. Basically, Mike Ashley last time he called BZG, who you talked about there, who just bought Derby tire kickers. He even criticised Amanda Staveley and PCP the first time round. Mike Ashley hasn't got close to that this time, because this deal is real and it's still ongoing. And if it wasn't, he's been pretty vocal recently. I'm pretty certain he would come out and say it. And I think anybody just has to join the dots when you look at his recent actions with regards to his statements. This is a man playing a role in a takeover. I've said it before, and here I'll say it again. It seems to be becoming a little bit of a dodgy catchphrase, but join the dots. They're all out there. They really are. And people just need to look a little bit closer at them, because things are moving. And who knows with this fan thing? It could be something that really does push through finally what we all want. And I'll stick by these guys while they stick by me. They've been good to me with information, good to me with just being able to bounce things off them, talk to things, and I believe in what they're trying to do. I really do. If I had the funds myself, I would try it myself, but I don't. And there are people out there who have the funds and haven't even thought about doing this. These guys have really put their head above the parapet. They've put their money where their mouth is, and they've taken a lot of taken some flack. A lot of positivity with that, but still taking
that's Twitter.
Twitter. Look, Steve, we're not going to talk too much about all that kind of thing, but at the end of the day, it's, to me, there's a lot of negativity when negativity isn't needed. It seems almost people are too ready to jump on the negative before they can see that there might be a positive. And you know what, anybody who knows me really well, I'm not the type of guy you might come across differently on here, but I'm not the type of guy who's like always a glass half full kind of guy. I'm really not. But you have to trust the people that you speak to, trust the people who know people, and you're one of those people as well, Steve. And when these guys are telling you that things are moving, or there is a remote bit of positivity, or that's positive and that's negative, you have to trust what they say. I feel like I've got contacts I can trust, and to be honest, things are moving, and there's no need for all the negativity. I just feel like people are ready to jump down people's throats when there's not really much need, and it's tiring, it's draining, it's upsetting. It's not good to see, not good to hear. And this might just sound like empty words, but it's not. It does affect. And there's a lot of people with a real lack of accountability. And that's just referencing things that I've experienced in the last couple of days, couple of weeks. There's just a real lack of accountability that there's a lot of empty threats. Then people follow them up with spurious rumors, and all of a sudden this thing builds and builds and builds. And ultimately, I think most people who watch me on here know exactly what I am. I was a Newcastle United fan, I still am, and I'm a right hand. And if I can tell you something that I find out, when I was purely a fan, I would really have appreciated that. So all I'm trying to do is, I'm not an attention seeker. Anybody who knows us knows I'm actually quite a private person. I think most people in the industry know that as well. But at times in my life, I've had me dirty laundry aired in public. I've mentioned it on here, Steve, the first podcast that we did. I talked about the issues that I had with Sunderland fans. It's not something that I particularly want to go back to. If it means you have to retreat from Twitter and stop coming on shows like this and telling people what you know, then ultimately, if trouble's going to come to my door, I'll just have to do that. And it's a shame that there is negativity out there on social media, so much so that it drives people back into their holes. And ultimately, all I'm trying to do is just help people out there. And ultimately, on this show, which is why obviously you're my mate, Steve, and I love coming on here and I love having a bit crackly on a Tuesday night. But one of the big things about coming on here that I've found in the last 6 months or so is it is such a positive space. And there is so much negativity around social media, but this place can be a really positive place because people are interested in what you want to talk about. People are converse with you, and it's good to get that interaction with fans. I've had people recognise us in the street at games and all sorts, and it's actually quite nice because people just want to know information, and if you can help them out in that little way, then there's nothing really wrong with that. Because for too long, too many people see journalism as a closed book, and it's all about hiding and can't say this, can't say that. Well, I try to take a different approach. If I can push the boundaries and say something that I shouldn't really say, I'll try my best to get that information out there. And it's not for clicks. I don't do anything for clicks or attention. It doesn't matter to me. Ask anybody that I work with at the Shields Gazette, and I barely even look at the figures of what my stories get. I just write things, and I'll say something from the heart, or I'll write a story that I believe in. I don't do it for clicks. I just get told at the end of the month, like, come on, Liam, you've got 10 days, you need to book your ideas up, or well done, you've hit your target. You know what I mean? I don't really look at it, and I get told off by my bosses for that constantly. But that's not what it's about to me. I'm just doing my job to my best of my ability. And I think you are as well, Steve. And I think it's just a shame that people just seem so intent to bring people down. And I hope it doesn't affect people in that way. I'm not going to lie, it has affected me in some ways. And that's not a good place.
It's sad. But when you've got, when you look down the chat, listen, we've got a lot of supporters out there, and a lot of people behind us. And the main thing is that on this program, which was set up simply to help people out during this horrendous period that we're going through as human beings, that we've managed to progress and form a fantastic community, and it's something that's good that's come out of COVID. So I don't intend to go anywhere. I hope that we can all stick together, and we can ride the storm and move on, and hopefully all witness a takeover in the new year together. That would be the ultimate dream. So we'll move on from that. Thanks for your support, Liam. I really do appreciate it. And we will get to the questions because they're mounting up. We'll whiz through them because there is quite a backlog.
I'll show up a bit. I'm just going off. I'm on these days.
That doesn't matter. People love the fact you're so honest. It's refreshing. Like, I'm not saying other journalists aren't like that, but you committed to coming on here, and you've made it a platform which you've thrived on it. So it's good for you, and I know that I know that the stuff that you give is never false hope. So that's why so many people like you. I lose track of the amount of texts, messages, on various forms of social media is leave him on the night. Leave him on the night. So it's great to know that you're probably the most sought after journalist, which is great. You've built it up, and well done you. Al Walid says, why did the MPs didn't include anything regarding the takeover? And Jonathan Ward's asking, was Ian Mearns not on the committee? No, Ian had another meeting, so he couldn't make it. But I mean, what's your take on that? And the whole MPs meeting?
Look, it's a shame. I would have liked to have seen some kind of mention of Newcastle United takeover, but I do think there were a lot of questions which are building some kind of narrative around this, and will be particularly helpful for any legal case that moves forward, whether that be the fans' legal case, which, like we know, that the cogs are turning on that one, or whether it be any other legal case that Mike Ashley may want to launch, or anybody else may want to launch in the meantime to get this takeover potentially over the line. So there were a lot of things that I'm sure the legal teams will have taken from the words that were said today, the positions that were established. So we'll wait and see. I wouldn't necessarily say it was all negative on the Newcastle United takeover front today in that meeting, despite the fact it wasn't overtly mentioned.
Yeah, okay. Mark Fleming says, fantastic news about the money raised for the food bank. It'll surely be needed because sadly things are not going to get any easier. Mark Curry again was just asking about the court case with regards to the fans group. We've already asked about that. Life Goal says Dwight Gale can lead the line to some extent, or else ASM might have to be thrown in. What's your take on who will have to come in and replace Callum Wilson whilst he is injured?
Look, if you're going to go down in St Maximin route, that's like a Man City no striker sort of thing, and I just think that would be a push too far, being brutally honest. I think it's got to be Joe Linton, unfortunately. I say unfortunately, that sounds really bad. I don't mean that doesn't suit him to play that role, but I think it's probably got to be him. Or Andy Carroll. Carroll could do it. I might be tempted. You know what? I might be tempted to throw Carroll in and see how he does, but when you haven't got the ball, which they won't have a lot of the ball against Chelsea, Carroll's lack of mobility around the place to hassle and harry is a real problem. So I think possibly Joe Linton may work in that game, but I think you've got to play a striker. I think Alan St Maximin really, in this slightly more advanced role, I've mentioned it on here, doesn't seem to be able to attack players. He's better when he's got space to run into and he can build up a head of steam from deeper and out from out on the left. I just don't believe playing him as a 9 almost would work, because playing him as a 10 and giving him a little bit more of a free role hasn't worked at all. It just doesn't suit me. I think he maybe needs that little bit of discipline in terms of position. And I think when he drops in on the break, he is much better. Picking the ball up 20 yards from the box, you think would be his best position to find himself in. It really isn't that. He's a much better player when he's 40 yards from goal. That's just my opinion, and other people might think differently, but I do think he needs that little bit of head of steam, and that's when he causes defenders real problems, because he's got that bravery to beat somebody when he's running at speed, which there aren't many players in the Premier League who can do that kind of thing. Playing him as a 10 and a 9 to me wouldn't work. Okay,
Mark Curry more or less answered your question there, mate, about St Maximin. Hal Cross says, Darlow saying he won't be warming the bench when Dubravka returns is a worry. Do you think so?
What do you expect him to say? You know what I mean? He's not going to say, okay, I'm happy to give up the number 1 jersey when my mate comes back. He's not going to say that. That's not the way goalkeepers are wired. But he'll probably have to accept that Dubravka is the number 1. And I think, you know what, all it's done is it's meant that Steve Bruce hasn't probably felt the need to rush Dubravka back. And Darlow's performances have really established himself, that new contract that he got means you're not worried about potentially bringing in a number 2 in the future, because he's done really well in the position and when called upon, and I'm sure he'll slot back into the bench role as and when Martin Dubravka's back, because realistically a fit Carl Darlow and a fit Martin Dubravka, there's no real choice, I would think, because Dubravka has been fantastic for so long that it would be really hard to pick him if he was fully fit for me.
Terry Armstrong, thanks for your kind message today, mate. It meant a lot. He says, any update of the progress of Sedwin Scott? Of course, he was at Dunstan and went on to do quite well at other Northern League clubs, being picked up by Newcastle on a months-long trial. Anything from Steve Bruce or anybody at the club on that?
No, the lad will just be training away, and fingers crossed he can perform well for him anyway. Fingers crossed he can get himself a deal somewhere, whether that's at Newcastle United or whether that's elsewhere. But fingers crossed he can perform enough to get himself a professional deal, because he's certainly been working hard, and he seems to have transformed as a player, particularly over the last 10 or 12 games in terms of playing for the club that he's played at. Because before that, he hasn't maybe had the goal scoring prowess that he's shown recently, but he's a young lad who's still learning his trade, and fingers crossed for him that he can get a professional deal out of this.
Yep. Okay. Michael Hurst says, do you think Bruce should sign a striker in January?
Yeah, well, I think in an ideal world, I would have had another striker. For me personally, I definitely would have gone for a striker. And I think priority for me, and I did say this in the summer as well, it is centre midfield. It's not right. It's just not right. I'd like to see Matty Longstaff get a chance there, but any combination that's been tried, whether that's a 3 or a 2 in the middle, just hasn't worked. Everton was the only sign that it really worked, but wow, that performance on Friday was really painful.
Notice I haven't touched on that at all.
Yeah, we're not. I think we should just forget about that, and we'll move.
Forget
on.
about it, mate. We'll put it back into the annals of history. We don't need to touch on that. And tomorrow night, I'm actually, I'm not doing it with Super Mac and Gibbo. We're going to do the Road to Wembley 1974. So that's going to be. We did the Fairs Cup one, which you can catch on the channel with Gibbo, which was brilliant. A lot of people enjoyed that. A lot of people who were obviously on that. Tomorrow night, the Road to Wembley 1974 with Super Mac and Gibbo. So a journalist who covered all the games and a man who played in all the games. So that'll be a lovely trip through history. And it's not a pre-record. That one is live. So everyone will get a chance to ask questions about it. And I know we get so many questions when Malcolm and Gibbo are on about the olden days, if you like, the older days. So that'll be a proper trip down memory lane. And it'll be great up until we get to the final.
Yeah, the amount of stories I've heard about that run, about that final from my dad and people like that, and he's got the program in my mum and dad's house. He's still got that program that he showed up there. And one of the most interesting things I've always been pointed out to, particularly by my dad, is that when you look at the honours list on the front of that program, that Newcastle United is a lot longer than Liverpool's, and we're only talking about 1974. So it just shows the different direction that the football clubs have gone in the last 40, 50 years.
We've got 20 minutes left. If you're the first time visitor to the channel, please hit subscribe. If you want to make a donation, you can join the channel. Only £1 or a couple of quid, that would be great. It goes towards the cost of running the show. If you want to make a donation, click the little dollar button down the bottom. All money goes obviously into the show and helps us make it bigger and better. But Wayne Bennett's wanting to know any news on Jethro Williams. Of course, he was injured last season, made a big impression with Newcastle fans. Before the injury, is there any chance? Do you think any light at the end of the tunnel that he could come back in some capacity?
Yeah, I think there is. Yeah, I'm not saying he will, but there's definitely a chance. He was a player that they checked up upon in the summer when they were looking for a left back, and it was made apparent to them that his recovery would still be quite lengthy. We've seen that he's still not really there yet. Newcastle United need a left back, so they went and signed Jamal Lewis. It wouldn't surprise me if maybe it could be something looked at in January. It may be something that is put off till the summer, but it would not surprise me in the slightest if Newcastle United were part of that conversation when Jethro Williams becomes available in the next 6 months or so. Okay, that would be good news. Hopefully he does come back and he's as good as he was last season. Dave's just explaining his question at the start of the show. Mark Douglas was given the reasons why PIF had walked away and were thought not to be happy at how they were treated. His comments came over as a downer, but happy you guys think he was one of the good guys. That's great. Cheers for clearing that up, Dave. Thank you, Billy, calling us two legends. I think we've got a long way to go before we can be called legends, but thanks for the comment. Anyway, doesn't matter who is available unless Steve Bruce bangs his head and sets them up to try and win. That's Jano's comment tonight on Newcastle under Steve Bruce. Tom thinks there should be an independent body that sorts out takeovers, owners and directors tests and makes the decision. Martin Nesbitt, thanks for your support as always, mate, and your nice messages today. Evening, lads. Keep the show on the road, as they say. Support from far and wide. Liam, Steve, you lads for amazing jobs and enlighten the day for most when you broadcast. Massive thanks from me. Thanks very much for that, mate.
Great video on the Facebook page regarding the sad trolls trying to make people's lives harder in this day and age of acceptance and awareness. Why on Twitter, etc., do more to deter this behaviour. Thanks, Jason. Means a lot as well. Mark, back on again. He says, got to be honest, Newcastle really do stress me out. Season ticket for 25 years. Will I ever learn? Probably not. I think you're amongst a group of people on here tonight who can all agree with that. If big picture does ever happen, says Mark Fleming, that will be the day I walk away from football, because it would hurt to see the history and future of Newcastle United reduced to nothing by the so-called Big Six, which is again something which I think we can all agree with. Mark Curry agrees as well. He says, I'll finish with football if the Big Six take control. Brunswick Miners said, our next resignation I want to see is Richard Masters. And Dave Havery just says, how are West Ham part of the 9 major shareholders? Yeah, go on, mate. Go on.
No, it's crazy. But I'm just going to pick up on that a little bit, because that could potentially be one of the things that there are so many variables. I've had people ask me questions about which way I think this will go, but that is one of the variables, is that all of a sudden there is a change in personnel at the top of the Premier League, and this is something that potentially could be pushed through. That is one of the variables. So I wouldn't rule it out, but it's hard to say that Hoffman and Masters, from an independent point of view and from an outsider's point of view, you wouldn't say they've done a particularly good job since taking over. But ultimately, it depends who's judging them, and if the top 6 think they're doing a good job, or the top 2, or whoever it may be, suggestions they were appointed by the top 2. That if they think they're doing a good job, then they might well stay in there. But that is one of the variables. And on to West Ham, yeah, it seemed like a very strange criteria about the longest serving. Very much to me looks like it's a way of shoehorning Manchester City as guaranteed in that top 6, because ultimately, if you were to pick the 6 biggest clubs in England, that they wouldn't feature in that. So yeah, I think that's probably just an offshoot of that kind of thing. But West Ham, we all know, look, the honours list shows exactly how big a football club they are, and that's not saying they're not a big football club, but they're certainly not as big as a number of other clubs in the Premier League at this current moment. Yeah,
okay. Any news on Staveley versus Barclays? I mean, I think it's all more or less done, that, isn't it? We're just waiting for a result, which I believe isn't till January.
I think it's. You maybe.
Is it later February? I think you said February last time. I think you might be right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a couple of months into next year is when we'll find out whether that's something that she's won, and they may well, PCP may well come out of that with a little bit richer, and fingers crossed they're also celebrating a takeover.
Nathan asks a very important question. Has anybody successfully joined all the dots yet, Liam?
Do you know what? There has been some people have joined the dots really well. Yeah. And it's not quite that much. I could make a soap opera out of some of the stories and the tales that people have wound together and they've sent me in DMs and that kind of thing. And there was a lot of people a long way off the mark, but there has been some people out there who've really joined the dots. And like I say, they're all out there. And I'm not meaning to be a pain in the backside of people, and I'm not trying to be clever. I'm just saying what I can say, and there's things I can't. And the dots are all out there. That's all I'll continue. Just keep joining.
Mike Stewart says, how close is Gail to returning? So
the last time I spoke to Steve Bruce, he said between 2, 3, 4 weeks. That's quite a big, yeah. So between 2, 3, 4 weeks. I suspect we were expecting December. He's out running. He is training. So it may be within the next couple of weeks.
I thought you meant Steve Bruce there.
Steve out running. I don't know about
that. John Brown says, can I ask what these guys, he means the Newcastle fans consortium, hope to achieve? Obviously the takeover, but at what cost to them personally?
These are guys who are Newcastle United fans. They've got Newcastle United at heart, and money-wise, they don't care how much it costs them to push this through. Speaking of these guys, speaking to Keith Patterson, who's heading this up effectively with Gordon Steen, and he's talked a lot about his one goal that he wants now with regards to this is that he wants to see a black and white shirt lift a trophy above their head. And that's ultimately what we all want. And that's why I'm really getting behind them. I trust what they're trying to do, and I really believe in it, because ultimately, is that not what we all want? Do we all not want Newcastle United to be as successful as they possibly can be? ultimately their aim, like you said, is not monetary. They don't want money back for what they're doing. They don't want compensation for decisions that have been taken or not taken. They effectively just want the Premier League to say to the consortium, okay, we'll pass you. We'll not go to court and we'll sort this out. If this action gets the Premier League back around the table, then we're all winners here. And these guys deserve a lot of credit as it is. But if they can push that a little bit closer, then look, they deserve a massive amount of credit. And fingers crossed that'll be what happens.
Tom Dixon's asking, will Mike Ashley give Bruce funds in January for new players if he's still there?
I don't know the answer to that. I'd be surprised. I really would be surprised. I'd be surprised if he dips his hand in his pocket again. Look, I've said the wrong term there. He doesn't dip his hand in his pocket if he allows the club to spend the money that's already there. I'd be surprised if Newcastle United sign anybody on a permanent basis in January. But like I say, he's surprised with before. It might surprise again.
Yeah, nice message there from Nathan. Out of any of the Northeast journalists, you've garnered a lot of respect and admiration throughout this really difficult time. I, for one, always go out of my way to listen and read your stuff.
Thanks, Nathan. Yeah, that's really, really nice. Thanks, Nathan.
A lot of positivity coming in for you, mate, tonight, which is really, really good. And for me as well, which is great. Both Liam and Steve at Top Palace, thanks for the show, lads. Much appreciated. Thanks very much for all of those really positive comments. Yeah, I mean, the Formula One is something which a lot of people keep mentioning on the show as well. We might as well talk about it with you. Now with Formula One and boxing in Saudi, do you think the Premiership will now want to be part of it? I mean, it's a good question. Other sports seems to have no issues with Saudi. It just seems to be the Premier League and Newcastle United. So, what is your thoughts on that?
Look, it's something that we all thought was a given at the start of this process. And when we thought it was a level playing field, we thought, why would the Premier League have a problem with some new money and really rich investors coming to the league and making it ultimately a more competitive and better place? And Richard Masters talked today about the Premier League. The real unique selling point of the Premier League is that it is the most competitive league on the planet in football terms. Why wouldn't you want that to be more competitive? Well, I think now we've seen the reason why. I don't believe that the Premier League do particularly want a part of this, but fingers crossed, this kind of action and pressure from all angles can bring them back around the table and let common sense prevail in this process, and not constantly be fighting against agendas and fighting against all of the top clubs who just don't want Newcastle United to have a piece of the pie. And look, Newcastle United fans aren't daft as well. That they're not necessarily wanting Newcastle United to suddenly become the new Manchester City. They just want to have a chance to have a little bit of success again and a fresh start away from Mike Ashley, who in 13 years, despite his recent positivity, in 13 years has proven he's not been a fit owner of this great and proud football club. That's what Newcastle United fans want. And this legal action from the fans, legal action from Mike Ashley, pressure from all angles, even the parliamentary questions today, the committee questions today, really could push for something that we all want. We've just got to keep hoping. And I've had some people come on to me today and say, you know what, Liam, shut up. It's over. It's gone. I think you'll back me up on this, Steve, that it isn't. And
it's not.
Until it is gone, then I'll keep it alive, because this is a massive hope for us as a football club and us as a fan base. For me as a journalist, do you not think I want to be reporting on the Champions League Newcastle United, a potential trophy winning Newcastle United, rather than a relegation fighting one? This is massive.
Well, that's all we want, the Champions League, according to Mark Lawrenson. So,
well, we do. We ask for that every year, don't we? That's when the fans were in. That's what they're shouting at Bruce at the back end of last season, wasn't it? They want the Champions League. Of course it isn't.
Yeah,
but I wouldn't trust what he says. Mr. Defensive coach, he didn't exactly fill himself full of credit, did he, when he was up here anyway? So
no.
Another one of yesterday's men who can happily be consigned to the garbage truck.
Alan Hansen made him as well. He carried him. David Baird says, any news on the Qatar court case? Is it finished?
No idea. I can't answer that question.
No
Google
problem.
it.
Ari, yes, I will keep the shows going. I'm not 100% sure I'll be able to do 7 a week when I go back to doing what I normally do, but I will endeavour to keep the show going 100%. So don't worry about that. I'm not going anywhere. Kirk bought the 1974 programme for £2 from a schoolmate in 1992. Thanks for sharing that. I've got one as well. Jonathan Ward says, Liam, do you think Newcastle's lack of attacking threat in games is due to Steve Bruce's tactics, or are the players not good enough to play the style Southampton did on Friday night? I think it's both. I mean, what's your take? We've got good players. There's no doubt about it. Is it square pegs and round holes? Is it familiarity because we've brought so many new players in and they're taking time to bed in with the team, or is it a bit of both?
Look, if we're going there about Friday, right? I was at St James's 5 days earlier, when Newcastle United played Everton, and there was a real fluidity about this central three, the midfield three. I thought Jeff Hendrick, I said it on here last week, made the players around him look really good. Sean Longstaff brought legs and a bit of quality. Miguel Almiron was Miguel Almiron, and they worked really well in that game. I think individually, performances, Newcastle United could not find a yellow shirt on Friday, and that came right from the back. Constantly gifting possession. They gifted Southampton 2 goals, one Almiron mistake, Longstaff mistake, and they could have gifted even more goals. It was one of those days where, this might sound controversial, I think Steve Bruce had a plan. I didn't buy into the idea that it was the same as Brighton or it was the same as Tottenham or Manchester United. I do think he went into this game with a plan, and I thought in some instances the players pressed quite high, almost trying to match the Southampton style of play. Yes, they're not as good at it. They haven't worked on it anywhere near as much as Southampton. They've got it off to a T, and they were second best in that department. But Newcastle United did not retain the possession from the back anywhere near well enough. And I thought there was too many people gifting possession away. Too many people had really bad days. So I think there's a little bit of that. I also think there is a little bit of the Newcastle United are where they are. They're a 13th, 14th side who have a good season, could push a little higher, have a bad season, could be looking really over their shoulders. That is Newcastle United. I think Southampton, in the manager that they have and the style that they play, is quite refreshing. I think they've got eyes to finish higher than Newcastle United this season, and I think they will, judging on that performance. They were a good, well-drilled, organised, energetic, pacey, dynamic side. Newcastle United looked anything but. But again, this is something that might sound controversial to people. I'm not going to put that all on Steve Bruce. I do think he had a game plan. I just don't think I don't think Newcastle United's players gave themselves any opportunity to implement that game plan. And that's why, in some ways, I do see it as slightly different to some of the non-event performances that we've had earlier this season. Tottenham, Brighton, Manchester United. I do think it was slightly different.
Okay, good stuff. Tony Lewins nicely sets us up because we always celebrate and pay respects to people for their birthdays. It's happy birthday to my good mate Tino. Had the privilege of bringing him over for talkings, having a few nights out with him, looking after him when I was a doorman in Newcastle. So a big happy birthday to Tino, top man. Also happy birthday to Shefty Kuchi. Somebody who didn't do too badly in a Newcastle shirt, despite his all complaining when he came. Wasn't too bad a player. But Tony Lewin says, going off topic, it's Tino's birthday today. Do you think if we hadn't signed him in 95, 96, we would have won the league? I thought it unsettled us as a team. Thoughts? Great player, though.
No, I don't. I mean, I'll have to disagree. I don't think it did. No, I think he was a fantastic player that came in and really put in a decent contribution at the back end of that season and beyond. Yes, I can see the idea of it changing the dynamic of a team, changing the dressing room. But I think ultimately, he was a quality footballer for Newcastle United, a character. We've seen stories Alan Shearer has been telling in recent days about him. A fantastic player, and he loves Newcastle United. You can tell that the way he talks on social media. You've met him, Steve. Obviously, a really positive kind of guy, and I think a cracker as well. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Did it upset the chemistry that they had that season? You know, you could make an argument for that, but I think Newcastle United needed an injection of quality at that time, and I think him and others brought in around the same time really did add that quality. It was just nerve. Newcastle United seemed to really lose their nerve towards the end of that season, and it's sad to even think about it, how far Newcastle United are away from that kind of thing now. When at that time, even when we failed, I was only young, but you always felt that the next opportunity would be just around the corner, and for us, it's just never really developed. We had a few cup finals, and then from the early 2000s, this century, Newcastle United have been so far, apart from the Champions League at the start, apart from the first couple of years, Newcastle United have been so far away from silverware in Europe that it's been a real hard watching Newcastle United in the last 15 years or so.
Paul Hill thinks it was David Batty's signing was a mistake. He should have kept Clark in. And I've got to say, Paul, me and Lee Clark both agree. We've talked about it many times. And I certainly think moving the players out of position, dropping Clark out of the team and moving Peter Beardsley, bad mistake. Wasn't Tino's fault. Great player, great lad, legend at the club. Dave W asks, what do you think of the calls for Elliot Anderson to be thrown in against Chelsea? Dave thinks it's personally a bit too soon for him.
Look, I think it is too soon, and I'd be very surprised if you see a young lad like that thrown in such a big high-profile game, especially when Newcastle United have got personnel in those departments. So I'd be very surprised, but it's good to see a young lad rewarded for his good form with the youth teams, and there is a pathway to the first team. Steve Bruce proven that. Give Matty Longstaff his debut. He's allowed others to be in and around the fringes. So if you're good enough, Steve Bruce will throw you in, and that's one of the positives.
Ellie, thanks for subbing and passing our best to your grandma and granddad. Thank you very much. Always nice to get new subscribers. Karen says, Liam, you talked about getting the Premier League back around the table. Does this mean they aren't at the table and not really interested?
Look, I don't know the ins and outs of where they are. So basically, I'm working on the idea that they're not around the table. And the fact that we're going down legal avenues would suggest they're probably not 100% at the table, particularly in talks with the consortium. But fingers crossed that they are. And hopefully we can all get a nice surprise heading into the new year.
Gary Jackman says, do you think if we bought an experienced defender along with Tino, we would have won the title? And my answer on that is when you look at the defence, it wasn't really the defence that was the issue. There's this misconception that the defence was poor and we leaked goals and we're involved in 1-4-3. But ultimately, the reason we lost the title that year, if you want to talk results, was we didn't beat Man United. If we'd beaten Manchester United at home and got a point away, it would have been a different story. But we fell to the old sucker punch, 1-0 Cantona.
Yeah, I think that was it. And I think it was a mentality thing as well, personally. I think if they had managed to get the better of Manchester United in that season, particularly that home game that you're talking about, then I think it could have been a totally different story. But when it started getting the championship rounds in that season and Newcastle United being second bested by them twice, you did start to worry for them. And that's one of them things.
Best story Tino I heard was when he signed with Darlington. George Reynolds even introduced him to the Crown, claimed he'd lost his passport and buggered off on the first flight out of Newcastle. I'll finish off my stuff with a story about George Reynolds. I got this from Gary Bennett, who was manager at the time. Apparently, when he was sitting in the office, Gary Bennett was sitting opposite him. There was like a slapping like that as a man walked in, and it turned out it was one of the guys who worked in the office who had a problem with his shoe. His shoe was coming to bits at the sole. George was sitting in his room. He had a big pile of 20s and 10s wrapped in elastic bands on his desk, and he goes, "What's that noise? What's that noise?" And Gary goes, "It's him. It's him. He's got a problem with his shoe. His sole's coming off." He went, "All right, come here, son. Come here, son." And he walks over with the bloke's looking at all this money on the desk, thinking he's going to get a new pair of shoes. So George looks at him, takes the elastic band off the notes and chucks him, and he says, "Here, stick that round your shoe." And that has been confirmed by George Reynolds, because I did meet George many years afterwards and asked him if that story was true, and he went, "Yeah, it is." Classic guy, absolute classic. Gallagher Shots, good evening, lads. I did an interview with Celez, and he believes that with a better goalkeeper we would stroll the league. Listen, I know there was a lot of animosity towards the goalkeepers. Pavel, had the infamous fallout with Keegan after the 4-3, and Pavel mentioned that in his book, God bless his soul. I mean, Les Ferdinand, you can probably still watch that interview on the Gallagher Shots podcast, so give them a shout and give them a watch. That game against Man U at home, I remember listening to. Talking Tyler, Steve, Liam, could we have Join the Dots t-shirt? Should make a fair bit for the food bank. Great idea, Talking Tyler. John from Q Tech, John Justice Allen, I hope you're watching. You are. I've just seen a comment from you. Join the Dots t-shirt with Liam's head on. That would be perfect. I'll leave you to do the design skills. Swag dogs.
Man. You'll end up getting minus for that.
You'd be surprised. A great community you've created here, Steve, at NUFC Matters. Trolls are just let's keep the show going. I am coming back in the next 5 minutes. I'm going to do a show called Steve Ask Steve Live Q&A, no holds barred. Ask us about anything. The pictures, the videos that have been circulated on social media. By all means, please come on for the next hour. When I come off this show, I'll be starting the next one. And ultimately, ask us anything you want. I've got no skeletons in my cupboard. Gary Jackman, great show, Steve. I watched one of the Super Sunday titles from Sky from 1997 and you were on there. Do you remember that? Yeah, me and my brother Rob were selected to do it. And it's the one with the Paul Weller theme tune on. And I've managed to finally get a copy. I was asking one of the guys on NUFC Trust from Mark to get it for us. And I eventually found it. So, yeah, great stuff. Let's finish off, Liam. Promote yourself. Where can people find your wonderful journalism?
Look, we don't, like I mentioned earlier, I don't really worry about clicks. So we work on a subscription-based model at the Shields Gazette. So decent journalism, you do have to pay for it. So it'd be really good if anybody likes the kind of stuff that I do in here, stuff that I do elsewhere, then just get in touch on, you see my Twitter handle down here, Liam J. Kennedy 23. But also if you go on the Shields Gazette, then it's only a couple of £2 for a month or two. It'd be fantastic if you could support the kind of work that we do. There's a lot of top journalists alongside me. It won't just be my stuff. Miles Starforth, Newcastle United colleague, others such as Phil Smith does a fantastic job on Sunderland, if that's your thing. Mark Donnelly, Jordan Cronin, Ross Gregory, Richard Minear. Fantastic team of journalists that we've got in the JPI media team. So if you can support us in any way, fantastic. If you can't afford it, don't mind. But I think you get 4 a month. So I'll make sure I write 5 good articles and then you'll have to pay for that one.
Listen, there's been so many comments. Apologies that we couldn't get through it. I mean, I know people keep calling for us to do a 2-hour show. I think one day we might have to, Liam. Hopefully when we get taken over and we can all celebrate something. But really appreciate your support, mate, over the last 48 hours especially, mate. Much appreciated. Look forward to getting you on next week. And let's hope it's as always, it's always a busy Tuesday. Let's hope we've got something a bit more positive to talk about as well, mate. But listen, Liam, have a great week and catch up with you soon, mate. Take care.
No, don't worry, Steve. I'm going nowhere. I'm going to start typing my question now.
Good stuff, mate. Love you the bits. Take care, mate. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again.